Tubi remains to this day to be one of the best free streaming services that allows for ads, but still has such a vast collection and one of the best collections, at least when it comes to like free streaming services, in my opinion. There's always something to watch on there no matter what mood you're in, and I think people are really starting to catch on. I mean, Tubi has been around forever, but back in May, it was their best streaming month, and it was at an all-time high when it came to how many people were streaming on that platform. In fact, Tubi has doubled its viewership since last year and has beat multiple other streaming services such as Max, Paramount Plus, Peacock, and streaming in general has recently beat broadcast and cable, which isn't really a surprise. Obviously, most people stream nowadays. So because Tubi is just getting to be so popular, maybe you don't know where to start when it comes to their horror collection, because not only do they have some really great horror movies, they have a lot of flops on there. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, there are some weird indie B weird movies on there, and maybe some of them are gems, you never know. But I collected and curated a list for you of some of the best horror movies, in my opinion, that are streaming on there right now. Also, when I went to make this list, I was super bummed because a lot of the movies I would have chosen said that they only had 7 days left on the platform. So they're removing a lot of horror movies right now, and that makes me really sad because some of them were so good, and I don't know if they will be streaming anywhere else, but maybe Tubi is like clearing out some of its collection so it can add a bunch more movies. So maybe in 6 months or so we'll revisit this video and I'll give you more recommendations depending on what their collection looks like. Now obviously movies on streaming sites such as Tubi can vary from country to country, so not all of these may be available in your country, but luckily I'm working with NordVPN on this video today and I have an exclusive deal just for my viewers. Now a VPN is not just great for streaming, which I will get to why exactly in a second, but it is also great for protection for using the internet because there's so much malware and cyber attacks and password hacking, and NordVPN has a feature called threat protection that is always running in the background even if you're not connected to a VPN server, so you're always protected no matter where you are. But of course my favorite way to use a VPN is accessing more movies. So NordVPN blocks your IP address so you can click on any country in the world and refresh your streaming service and you automatically have access to all of that country's streaming. So if the movies in today's video aren't streaming on Tubi where you are, make sure to check out NordVPN. You can click the link in the description box down below or go to this website here. There is an exclusive NordVPN deal going on currently with 4 bonus months for free, and there is a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk involved. Now let's get into all of the movies. I'm sorry this intro is so long. I tried to go for the more underrated picks. Obviously, I think if you're scrolling and you see the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre on there, you know about that, you know it's good. So I tried to pick ones that hopefully you haven't seen. And I actually have separated this video into 3 categories, and I will have timestamps in the description if you want to jump around for recommendations. But basically we are going to be doing found footage category because there are a lot of great found footage movies on Tubi. Unfortunately, a lot of them are being removed right now, which is very sad. So I didn't include some of the best ones, but they still have a great selection. So we got found footage. The next category is going to be disturbing horror movies because they got a couple on there that are disturbing for sure, if that's what you're in the mood for. If you're in the mood for like something a little bit more messed up. And then we have general recs, and that has 10 movies in that. So yeah, just general movies that I think are good on there. Overall, I have 20 movies to recommend, so let's get started with found footage. You know the first one. Say it with me. If you are on Tubi, you know what is coming. Gone Jam Haunted Asylum, thank you. It's been a minute since I talked about it. I know I talk about it a lot. There's another one on here that you are not going to be surprised is on here. I talk about this a lot because I love it. It's one of my favorite movies. It's in my top 30 movies of all time. It is just my kind of horror. So the crew of a horror web series travels to an abandoned asylum for a live broadcast and soon encounters much more than they expected as they move deeper inside the nightmarish old building. Haunted building, horrific imagery. Oh my goodness. This is one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. That being said, it's not going to be the horror for everyone. Everyone likes different things in horror. This movie is my kind of horror. Like, it is so horrifying to me. And like I always say, give it 30 minutes. You get through the first 30 minutes and you're on your way. So the beginning, just like most found footage movies with the build-up, it's a little bit slower of a burn. So you got to stick with it. But trust me, if you like generally my recommendations, you'll like Gone Jam. But also, if you've been around, you've already seen it. So let me know your thoughts on Gonjiam. Next up is a movie called The Tunnel, which is a 2011 movie, and this is one that you could not find anywhere, although some said it was streaming on YouTube as well. It could be here, free on YouTube. A film crew learns of a government cover-up about the abandoned train tunnels beneath the heart of Sydney and decides to go inside to try to find the truth. Very quickly, the group begins to realize that perhaps the cover-up was for good reason. If you're a fan of movies like Wreck or Quarantine or As Above, So Below, you know, that kind of trapped, isolated, claustrophobic type movies, then you'll really like The Tunnel. I think it's a really underrated horror movie and a great found footage. Next one is obviously good. It has a cult following. People love this movie for a good reason. Grave Encounters 1 and 2 are on Tubi right now, and making this video just makes me want to rewatch all of these movies so bad. Specifically Grave Encounters. It's just such a comfy movie to me for some reason. The crew of a ghost hunting TV show hole up in an abandoned psychiatric hospital hoping to catch some spooks on camera. A scenario that can only ever end badly, and it does. Whoever wrote that description is hilarious. Anyway, love this movie. Again, haunted old building. It's a lot like Gonjiam, I guess I should say, is a lot like Grave Encounters. So if you like one, you like the other. Just good vibes. And I love the reality TV aspect of how they're filming a TV show, and like the goofiness of that is just so on point and so entertaining. One of the most entertaining found footage movies for sure. Next is an underrated found footage movie I only just watched this year, and honestly was pretty impressed with how low my expectations were going in, and that is Apollo 18. If you're a fan of space horror at all, or, you know, found footage set in space, this is going to be your movie. Hours of found footage classified for decades point to a subsequent moon mission, Apollo 18, that end very badly. Astronauts go on a mission to install radar scanners and discover a Soviet space capsule nearby. The men also discover a dead cosmonaut, and unfortunately for them, learn how he died. I just love how they keep this subdued and they don't try to be super over the top with it, and they obviously have a limited budget, but I thought with what they were working with, they did a really great job, and it was, again, very, very entertaining. Next is one of my favorite found footage movies of all time, including, you know, up there with Gonjiam and Blair Witch Project, and that is Butterfly Kisses. This movie is so good. It's kind of mockumentary style as well. Like, there's found footage within it, but a lot of it is like filming a documentary. So if you're interested in that kind of subgenre of found footage, the mockumentary style, you would probably really like this one. A filmmaker discovers a box of videotapes depicting a disturbing student film project about an urban legend known as Peeping Tom. As he sets out to prove the footage is real, he becomes obsessed along with the film crew following him. Again, horrifying in its own way, in a subdued way, and that's one of the things I love about found footage. And if I ever made a horror movie myself, it would be a found footage movie, because you can just get away with so much, and it's so easy to build atmosphere and tension with a found footage movie and a low budget. And Butterfly Kisses does this really well, and I really like the story and the overall atmosphere of this movie. So the last found footage movie I'm going to talk about is actually the first in the category of disturbing. So let's get into the disturbing horror movies on Tubi. Again, they come with a warning. I mean, not all of these are going to be that intense for some, but I'm kind of more on the sensitive side when it comes to disturbing horror, so just bear that in mind. Some of these are going to be fine for most of you. But the first recommendation under disturbing, and our last found footage, Be My Cat, A Film for Anne. An aspiring Romanian filmmaker obsessed with Hollywood actress Anne Hathaway goes to shocking extremes to convince Anne to star in his upcoming film. I think if you're a fan of found footage, you should watch this movie, because it is so unsettling. This is exactly what I'm talking about with what you can do with a low budget and building atmosphere and tension. This movie is just so uncomfortable. In a good way. It's definitely a one-time watch because it is very upsetting. And in fact, the creator, he had posted recently about some hate that he's been getting about this movie, because people assume that he is a lot like his character that he plays in the movie, because the filmmaker is the lead in this, and he's just great at what he does to, you know, he plays a good weirdo, okay? And so I think some people take that to heart and like think that it's real, or that the women were exploited in this or something, and he clarified all that on Twitter. Anyway, that's all to say, it's effective, okay? It's unsettling, so you've been warned. I couldn't include a list of disturbing horror movies on Tubi without including Audition. This follows a widower who decides to start dating again, and aided by a film producer friend, they use auditions for fake production to function as a dating service. And when he becomes intrigued by the withdrawn, gorgeous Asami, they begin a relationship. However, he begins to realize that Asami isn't as reserved as she appears to be, leading to gradually increased tension and a harrowing climax. This movie is famous for a reason. I know most people have probably seen it, and I said I was trying to pick some like gems and like underrated movies you probably haven't seen, but this is just your sign if you haven't seen it to watch it. But it is disturbing, and it does have that reputation for a reason. But I also really love the story of this one. I think it's really good and just done well, and it's in that era that I love, late 90s, came out in 99, so you have to watch it. The next two I recommend carefully because I don't love these movies. I think I gave them both like 3 stars or something, but I wanted to include them because I think a lot of people do enjoy these movies. They're just a little too much for me personally. First, we have Incident in a Ghost Land. This is one of the hardest watches I've seen recently in the past like 5 years or so. 16 years after a traumatic event, a mother and 2 daughters reunite at the house where it happened, but soon their reunion starts to take a bizarre turn. This is a weird movie, okay? Very, very strange. A weird viewing experience. You feel like you're losing your mind a little bit for most of it until you realize what's going on. And it's just shocking. It's a shocking movie, and it's like it's disturbing, but it's not graphic, if that makes sense. Again, I recommend this with like very cautiously because it is bizarre. And it is disturbing, but I feel like it doesn't really show that much. If you've seen it, you probably know what I'm talking about, but this is just a weird one. If you're in the mood for like a weird, messed up movie that makes you very, very uncomfortable, then Incident in a Ghost Land. Next we have The Collector, which is described more as a horror action. Definitely leans more action, feels like a home invasion with a twist. Desperate for money to pay off a debt, a man targets a wealthy family's home and plans to break in and steal a valuable gem. He soon learns that he picked the wrong night to carry out his plans, for a masked madman has gotten there first, imprisoned the family, and lined the mansion with deadly traps. This movie is, again, wild. It's wild. It's probably not as disturbing as the others on this list, but I put it in the disturbing category because it unsettled me a lot for some reason. I don't know if it was because it felt realistic in some way, but it just made me really uncomfortable. But if you haven't seen it yet, I would say check it out. For me, it's a one-time watch. I'll never watch it again. I'm glad I watched it just to know what all the hype was about. But yeah, I do recommend it for most people. Lastly, for the disturbing category, this is a movie I completely forgot about, and I actually did a video live reaction to this like 10 years ago. Okay, don't go look it up. Don't do it. The movie is called Vile. And if the title tells you anything, it's weird. 4 friends are kidnapped by a madman and locked in a house with 6 other people. Each of the captives has to endure life-threatening torture to fill a device attached to their heads, or they will be trapped inside forever. This is just like Saw. And I can't believe when I did my video on I want to play a game that isn't Saw, I'll link that if you want more game-like movie recommendations. I can't believe I didn't did I include this? I don't think I did. This one is very much like Saw because they have to fill these little tubes with adrenaline, and you can get the adrenaline however you see fit, but you gotta fill those tubes, and it is weird and gory. Obviously, it's more on the low budget side, so it's probably one of the most Tubi-ish movies on this list, but give it a try if you want something gory and messed up. Now we're gonna get into the general recommendations, just other movies that don't really fit into either of those categories, and ones I think you need to watch. First up, say it with me now, Triangle. It's been a while since I talked about Gonjiam, and it's been a while since I talked about Triangle. Those are the 2 movies, if you're new here, I'm well known for talking about, and if you haven't seen them yet, what are you doing? Again, one of my favorite movies of all time, in my top 30. Triangle, one of the best thriller, mystery, psychological thrillers. It definitely has horror elements to it, but I'd say it's the least horror in this video, and really great for beginners if you're new to horror. 5 friends set sail and their yacht is overturned by a strange and sudden storm. A mysterious ship arrives to rescue them, and what happens next cannot be explained. Like usual, I don't want to say too much about this because I've talked about it at length before, and I never want to give anything away. But this is like a mind-bending movie, so if you want something that's going to keep your attention and keep you hooked in and blow your mind, then watch Triangle. Next, super underrated movie. I rewatched it again this year. I love it. I have it on DVD. Splinter. Now this is like a horror sci-fi creature feature. Well, it's like a parasite. I love this movie. I think it is so well done, and why aren't there more people talking about it? Because it's genuinely really, really good. When their plans for a trip go awry, Polly and boyfriend Seth decide to check into a motel. On their way, they're carjacked and kidnapped by low-rent crooks who take them to a nearby gas station. Along the way, they encounter an increasingly terrifying horde of parasites, and if any of them intend to survive, they'll have to outsmart the deadly organisms. This is just gross. It's a weird, gross movie, but I love the visuals in this, the practical effects done in this. Even the CG for the time it came out in 2008, I think looks really great. Like the parasites themselves, I think look really good. So definitely give this one a try if you haven't seen it yet. It's just so underrated. Next is a more recent movie that came out in 2020 that I really enjoyed, and it is called Meander, which is like a horror sci-fi dystopian type movie. A woman loses consciousness while traveling along a deserted road, waking up to find herself locked in a series of bizarre tubes filled with dangerous traps. She has no choice but to crawl forward and confront the wounds of her past trauma. Again, a little bit like Saw, if Saw was more on the emotional side, like dealing with emotional traps as well, not just physical torture, but emotional torture. And I really liked that, and I really liked this story. I resonated with it a lot, and I thought it was really beautiful. Next is a movie I don't know if I've ever talked about on the channel, and it's a horror comedy, if you can believe it. It's not really my genre that I usually recommend, but I saw it was on there and I thought it was fun, so I thought I'd recommend it. Housebound. A would-be thief is remanded to the custody of her estranged mother, who turns out to be correct in her assertion that evil spirits are afoot in their family domicile. It's like familial drama with some ghosts, but a lot of comedy. It's heavy on the comedy, so keep that in mind. It's usually not my kind of movie, but I really like the supernatural aspect of this, and the house setting and the atmosphere I thought was really good. And it's a fun movie. Next, if you want another weird psychological horror that is just bizarre, Possum. After returning to his childhood home, a disgraced children's puppeteer is forced to confront his wicked stepfather and the secrets that have tortured him his entire life. Again, like Meander, that emotional damage, if you're dealing with like a familial emotional trauma or anything like that, this, you know, could be very therapeutic for you. But it's weird. It's bizarre. Keep that in mind. And very subdued. Like, it's much more, there's horror elements, but it's much more psychological than like graphic horror or anything like that you're gonna get into. But it's really good. It's like, it's creepy. It's a creepy movie with a lot of like weird visuals. I was really excited to see the next movie on TUBI, and that is the original Pulse from 2001. This is a Japanese horror. After a college student commits suicide, a number of young adults living in Tokyo witness terrifying visions transferred across the internet. As more people disappear throughout the city, the internet becomes a breeding ground for malevolent spirits. This is what I like to call tech horror. I did a whole video on tech horror if you want more recommendations like this, but I love the Y2K, early 2000s tech horror. Oh my gosh, and this movie just scratches that itch so well. It is so good. The original Pulse is incredible. Probably one of the better movies on this list, and one of the better movies on TUBI right now is the Japanese version of Pulse. The American remake, not great, okay? Like most American remakes, it's not great. I like it. I own it. I watch it. But nothing compares to the original, especially when it comes to that Y2K tech. Next is the most recent movie that has come out. It actually came out this year, and I've already talked about it in a couple videos ago of 2024 horror you might have missed, so you can check out that video. But Lovely, Dark, and Deep is streaming for free on TUBI, and I was really blown away that it was on TUBI for free, considering it was just on Prime not that long ago. A new backcountry ranger travels alone through the dangerous wilderness, hoping to uncover the origins of a tragedy that has haunted her since she was a child. I have a lot of movies on here that are like haunted from their childhood, or they're haunted by something. It's a lot of that kind of story going on. I guess that's the kind of movies I like. Lovely, Dark, and Deep is a cosmic horror, so you're gonna get some really bizarre images, and I've already talked about this recently, so I'm not gonna go into it, but really, really good. I think it's gonna be one of the more like underrated movies of 2024, and definitely in my top 10. of the year so far, so definitely give it a try. I think it was really good. It's not going to be for everyone, but it was definitely for me, and I really enjoyed it. I can't believe I haven't talked about this next one on the channel before, and I watched it for the first time this year. I cannot believe it took me so long, and I've only given 3 movies this year 5 stars, and this is one of them. I've watched 50 movies so far this year. Train to Busan, 5 stars. Perfect movie, wouldn't change a thing. Again, has that emotional aspect. A man and his estranged daughter and other passengers become trapped on a speeding train during a zombie outbreak in South Korea. This just affirms that Korean horror or Korean film in general is just one of my favorite countries to make film, honestly. Even movies like The Good, the Bad, and the Weird, I absolutely love. That's not a movie I would normally watch, but something about Korean movies I love, and Korean filmmakers and directors. And Train to Busan is no different. This movie, so beautiful. I loved it so much. I was sobbing. It destroyed me. So if that's the kind of movie you're interested in, then Train to Busan. But I assume most people have seen it. I had to put it in this video though, even though I know most people have seen it, because how could I not talk about it? I've never talked about it on the channel. I love this movie. It is so perfect. Next up we have Possessor, which came out in 2020. This is done by Brandon Cronenberg and is a horror sci-fi kind of dystopian movie as well. This follows an elite corporate assassin who takes control of other people's bodies using brain implant technology to execute high-profile targets. Very Black Mirror, so if you're a fan of Black Mirror and haven't seen Possessor, what are you doing? Because it's very similar. Again, very great imagery, kind of an emotional aspect as well, and great performances in this. Definitely one of the better movies on TUBI right now, and more underrated. And I love the sci-fi dystopian aspect, and like the technology aspect I think was done really well. Lastly is another horror sci-fi. It's just one of my favorite subgenres when you mix a little weird science fiction in with some horror elements. Yeah, sign me up. So the last movie I'm going to talk about is The Endless. 2 brothers receive a cryptic video message inspiring them to revisit the UFO death cult they escaped a decade earlier. Hoping to find the closure that they couldn't find as young men, they're forced to reconsider the cult's beliefs when confronted with unexplainable phenomena surrounding the camp. I will also say that Synchronic is also on Tubi, and I enjoyed that movie a lot as well, and there is like a trilogy of The Endless. So if you enjoy The Endless, there's also Resolution and Synchronic in that trilogy. I'm not sure which comes first, or if they're just taking place in the same world, or if one's a sequel, prequel. I'm not really sure on the order of that, but you can watch Synchronic on Tubi as well if you want something that's like also associated with The Endless, if you've already seen it. But The Endless is a really underrated movie and definitely a gem on Tubi, and I really enjoyed it. If you're in the mood for like a slower paced, slow burn, weird visuals kind of movie. So there you have it, 20 movie recommendations that are streaming right now on Tubi as of June 2024. Let me know which of these you've seen, which ones you would recommend on Tubi, or just your favorite movies streaming on Tubi right now in general, and make sure to check out NordVPN. Link is in the description. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.